Hello and welcome to the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. Today we have one of our attorney mediators with us, returning to us, Debbie Snyder. Hi,
Thank you,
Debbie.
Roseanne. Hi.
Yeah. Debbie's here today to talk to us about what exactly is gray divorce, which we hear a lot about. And the second thing is, why is it on the rise? So, Debbie, I know that you have some points to make, and anything that you can provide to us to help us understand this better would be great.
Okay, well, thank you, Georgianne. So, in preparation for this subject, I did some research, and this is a phenomenon actually that's happening in this country, and there's a lot of speculation about what's going on, but there are essentially four reasons that most experts say that divorce among this over 50 demographic is increasing. So in 2004, the AARP called it gray divorce, and it means divorcing couples when both parties are over the age of 50. And then a lot of other researchers, sociologists and psychologists are now calling it the gray divorce revolution. So it is a really society-wide kind of phenomenon.
Let's go.
And well, it's a number of things. I mean, a lot of it has to do with a lot of shift in our society, frankly, since the end of the Second World War. So this is kind of a long-standing phenomenon, and the first and most obvious reason I think is because we're all living longer, and people are taking care of themselves. There are a lot of people invest heavily in their physical well-being, and they also invest in their emotional well-being. And that phenomenon is leading people to realize that their life isn't over when they reach 50 or 60. They might have, if they have taken care of themselves, they might have 20 or 30 good years ahead of them. So a lot of it is simply that people are living longer, and people are seeking a kind of satisfaction, I think, in many aspects of their life. And I think that includes their relationship status.
It's making me think, Debbie, like it's almost like we have an extra season that we didn't used to have years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you often hear people say, I'm ready to reinvent myself.
Right.
I've heard that from some of my clients at the office center. I want to reinvent myself. My life isn't over. And again, a lot of this is attributable to the rise in women's independence as a society. Again, this has been happening for many generations now. Women are better educated. They're living longer. Many of them are in very good health, and they've sought careers that are important to them. They're well paid. They're well respected, and with independence comes, again, a sense of seeking emotional well-being. And I think that is part of this phenomenon. Absolutely. Women are just more independent. They're not as dependent on their husbands as they were, before the Second World War and immediately after the Second World War.
And I also think, and you may plan on talking about the stigma of divorce itself.
Right. Again, I think that's a big part of it too. Exactly. Our society has become more liberal in many ways. So the over 50 crowd, as young adults, they thought they had to get married and stay married. Right. So they got married in their early 20s. That was what society expected them to do. That's what their parents expected them to do. I think many women were raised with the expectation that, well, you didn't really have to have a career. All you had to do was get married and your husband would take care of you. Well, that's no longer the case. That's not the thinking in our society any longer. So it's much more socially acceptable if you're in an unhappy relationship, to end that relationship and seek happiness elsewhere. Another reason is the whole empty nest syndrome, that people raise their families, and everybody acknowledges that childbearing is a big responsibility. It's a huge investment of time, energy, money, and when your children are no longer needing you, suddenly the empty nest kicks in, and you might look at your spouse and say, this isn't satisfying for me anymore on any level, and I want to seek some satisfaction. So I think the empty nest has a lot to do with it, and I also think retirement has a lot to do with it.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm just thinking, yeah, I've seen people, they get to that empty nest place and the two people don't want the same things.
They might not want the same thing any longer. I mean, their focus had been on their family. Their focus had been raising their family. I had a couple recently in my practice who have 7 children, and they've been raising a family for many, many, many years, and they are at that point where the youngest one is ready to be more independent. The older ones are launched on their own, have been for a long time, and they're at that point where they're not looking at the same thing. So I've seen this phenomenon firsthand in my own practice.
And then the retirement piece, I'm guessing there's just a reflection at that point of.
I think reflect back on your life many times when you're facing retirement, and people, again, for some people, I think it precipitates a crisis, and they look at all aspects of their life. They look at, how they want to spend the rest of their lives. Have they been doing something satisfying? And are their relationships meeting their needs? Are they happy? Does their spouse make them happy? And if this is someone they've been married to for many, 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 many years, that person may not be the person that they were in the beginning. And so it may feel like I'm deserving of finding more happiness and more satisfaction in my relationships.
Yeah, the whole thing on this rise thing sounds like it has to do with the future. If we didn't used to see this future at a certain stage. Now there's a whole future, a whole nother season, as I said.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
People are really invested in maybe reinventing themselves in a way that brings them happiness.
Mm-hmm. Well, you really helped describe, I heard at least 4 things from you of why this is on the rise. Just being with living longer, women being more independent, self-sufficient career-wise.
Right.
Retirement, I forget what the other.
Retirement, and the other one is the empty nest.
Yes, yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of speculation about some of the other reasons, but those I think are the primary reasons that most experts are saying that this is on the rise. And I would say to anyone who's over 50, who's been has been in a marriage a long time, if you're considering making a change, it's always a good idea to seek out someone that for counseling and for legal counsel, especially, that has some experience in this, because there are some considerations that you need to take into account, particularly if you're really not just over 50, but facing retirement, facing, maybe that 65 to 68 year.
I'm thinking Social Security comes into play there.
Social Security comes into play. You need to look at retirement. All those retirement accounts that you've been building for much of your career may suddenly be vastly important in terms of your day-to-day income. Mm-hmm. So it's important to factor that in. And they may also be, your Social Security may be in pay status now. Well, when it changes into pay status, then it becomes a very different kind of asset in terms of settling a divorce. Mm-hmm. So you just need to find someone who's really experienced, comfortable with that, and experienced with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for these. First of all, for describing what it's such a simple thing as if you're over 50, that being what the gray divorce is. Any of you that have any questions for Debbie on the topic of gray divorce, questions in general, that's what Alpha Resource Center for Divorce Mediation is there for. 1-800-310-9085 for any of your questions.